almost always a counter-argument to what I'm saying, because the range of the autistic spectrum is such that it's very, very inclusive of almost everyone with any of the autistic traits. So often there are other features present here, an insistence on sameness. People with autism have attentional or perceptual abnormalities, and they notice fine details or very small changes in the environment often. And there are difficulties in generalizing to new situations. And this is difficult for very young children because this directly impacts their ability to learn in traditional ways. That doesn't mean to say they don't pick up on things. It doesn't mean to say that they are any less intelligent. However, as a developmental disability, the symptoms of autism do get in the way of traditional education. And this is a challenge for teachers and teaching assistants and the carers of those who help very young children in the educational system. But sometimes people with autism do have exceptional talents. And they can have savant abilities. They have expert ability in a very small domain. That might be things like playing the piano, it might be mathematic ability or something like that. But this accounts for only a very, very small percentage or proportion of people that exhibit any of the traits of autism whatsoever. So let's go back to basics a little bit and ask, what is autism? Let's break it down into the component symptoms. Well, a long time ago, in the academic literature, we came across this triad of impairment, and I'm going to talk just a little bit about that. Now, the triad of impairment is a way of formulating autism in one's own mind, that it has an impact on three very different domains of function or aspects of a person's life. These are characterized, as I have up on the screen here, impairment in social interaction. Social interaction means making friends and getting along with people, knowing what other people think, and communicating to a certain extent what you think, and really getting on with the people around you in a way that they understand. So social interactions, the relationships that people form. The other cluster there is restricted, repetitive, and stereotyped patterns of behaviour. And a lot of you will be familiar with, at least in the UK, we call this stimming behaviour. This is where arms will flail out, or there will be repetitive movements of limbs, or they're called stereotyped patterns of behaviour. These might be characterised by sort of clicking or flicking of any of the limbs, the head or the hands. And there are various reasons for this, but it's characteristic of autism. It's one of the markers there. So restricted range of movement, if you like, in terms of the choice of movement that people tend to do at a resting state. Especially when a person with autism is anxious, they will stim or do these repetitive movements much more, and they can be considered soothing. Okay, so that's one of the other range of symptoms, if you like, that characterise autism from the formal academic literature. This by no means accounts for all of the vast array of symptoms we see in autism, but the final one, and perhaps the most disabling, is impairment in verbal and non-verbal communication. And if we look at the autistic continuum, ranging from very high-functioning Asperger's, or peculiarities, if you like, in how a person holds themselves, right the way down to the most disabled person that's almost unable to communicate in any way with those around them, or even indeed at extremes care for themselves. It's a very disabling condition in very young children especially, and this sometimes follows through a person's entire life. So what we see is a full range of impairment there. When we speak of the verbal and non-verbal domain, what we're talking about is a person without language, without verbal language. In a lot of instances, in what's known as classic autism, or some people call it Kanner's autism, or autistic disorder. And this is the lower functioning end, or the less able end of the autistic spectrum. Those people at the Asperger's end or the high functioning end, high functioning autism end, you might have heard of these phrases, often do have verbal or good linguistic ability and can hold very intuitive and fluent conversations. Now, those people that lack a verbal language, as I said before, it doesn't mean they can't communicate. And any of you that are parents of autistic children know that autistic children very definitely do communicate, but they communicate in what would be considered non-traditional ways.